see, my dear. Sonata for Executioner and Various Young Women.
Oh, it's sort of nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, guys, I have a theory about the synthesizer that pleasures you to death.
And what's that theory, Chris?
My theory is the film Barbarella, from which you heard that clip, and we'll get to more later in the episode, came out right after the introduction of the Moog synthesizer.
Oh, I see. I could see that.
And like when the Moog synthesizer came in to play with pop music, it was just like that. I mean, yeah, that is actually a synthesizer that metaphorically pleasures you to obscene amounts.
It's aural pleasure.
Yeah, A-U-R-A-L.
There you go. Perfect. Hey, folks, it's Film Trace. This is a podcast where we trace the life of a film from conception to production all the way to release and reception. We are doing, continuing our camp cinema season. We're episode 7 of that season, the 1960s. We're doing the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, or Cherbourg, if you're French. I don't know, Chris, correct me.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
From 1964. And then Barbarella from 1968, which you just heard a little clip from. We have a special guest, Manish from It Pod to Be You. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Tell us about yourself and your podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I am an occasional writer, but much more frequent podcaster. And yes, I host a podcast called It Pod to Be You, which is about romance movies. I usually have a guest come and talk about their favorite. I also did a 1960s miniseries back in 2022. We covered movies that were like either made in the 60s or took place in the 60s. Umbrellas of Cherbourg was on that miniseries, so
nice.
I'm always happy to podcast about it. It's one of my favorite movies. I also host a Bollywood podcast that is very just in its infancy. In fact, I've only released one episode, but it's a rankings podcast where friends come together to rank Bollywood movies together. So I've kind of been planning it for a few weeks now, and so it's just started. It's going to start to come out later in the month of June. So
Very cool.
Any Bollywood fans, please come and find that on all podcasting apps.
Very
Love
cool.
it.
Fantastic. All right. How do we want to dive into this? Chris, did you choose these movies?
You know I did, Dan.
That's what I thought, because I was like trying to think about, did I choose this?
Were you in a fugue state? No, that's just my regular state.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Umbrellas of Cherbourg was kind of a no-brainer for me, and it was awesome to come across Manish's show about it. And if you haven't already bookmarked that, once again, I'm also going to direct you to do that. It is a really good rundown of everything. Like you said, Manish, you guys focus a lot on the romantic elements, which are super strong in Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And I think this is a really unique film to talk about in this context of camp cinema, because it undoubtedly has been referenced as camp cinema by many film lovers and just pop culture enthusiasts in general, and yet it's also like just legitimately, in my opinion, like just a really good movie, and it has that kind of quality that plays with this notion of camp in a way that is both sophisticated and also just like it's like cotton candy. Like it's such a strikingly beautiful film, from its stylistic tendencies to its storytelling, framing device, and so much more. And yet it is just like so full of this kind of over the topness that it is undeniably camp as well. I have a unique kind of relationship with the film because as Dan kind of teased, I lived with a family in France for a summer when I was 16, and I still romanticize it nostalgically. And it was a rainy day, and the men in the household, the older teenager and the dad were super upset that their soccer game got rained out. And so we wound up stuck in their house, and this was on the TV. And it was just like a really kind of magical moment, because like I was dreading going to this soccer game because I am not a sports person at all.
Yeah.
And and then like having the mom turn this on, and then it just kind of, and it was like, you know, it was, I don't know, it was just like, so it was such a French like scene. Like we brought out like the older sister like came in with a fresh baguette that was like in a wet paper bag, and it was just like, it was incredible. Like it was like probably my favorite memory from that whole summer was seeing this movie and spending it with this family, half of which were grumpy and half of which were just entranced, myself included. So I wanted to make sure we covered it at some point in the on the podcast, and this just seemed like a perfect spot for it, and kind of a unique spot for it as well. I'm curious, Manish, if you'd be willing to share a little bit more about why it's your favorite and what kind of your personal history is with Cherbourg.
Yeah, you know, I saw this movie in the theater for the first time. It was playing. I was living in Boston at the time, so it was playing at sort of the local, like art house, independent, retrospective theater in Cambridge, kind of near Harvard, the Brattle Theater. Shout out to them. I saw many great movies there, and I saw it because I was a big fan of Catherine Deneuve, having discovered Belle de Jour as part of my Criterion Collection, you know, introduction as a, you know, 20-year-old cinephile that is discovering all this stuff for the first time. And I didn't know that it was a sung-through musical. I knew it was a musical, but I thought there'd be dialogue. So that was kind of not off-putting, but it threw me off for a bit. So trying to follow everything, and I was equally entranced with it. I found it to be such a beautiful love story, and it looked gorgeous, and I really appreciated actually sort of the sung through nature of it. And as I've watched it more and more, you know, in the last probably like 12 years, I just have fallen in love with it's sort of bittersweet romance. It's sort of like more like childish take on, you know, romance in the initial stages and how the movie kind of grows up, you know, with its characters. Yeah, I think it's such a singular movie. I've become such a fan of Jacques Demy since. You know, I've seen a lot of his movies, are the ones that are available, and you know, like Enchant Bon Vie is another favorite of mine, as well as Donkey Skin and Young Girls of Rochefort, of course. So yeah, I think it's such a unique movie, and you know, I also am a fan of movies like La La Land and Barbie, which both have cited this movie very directly. Yes. And so it's the kind of movie where I'm like, it's so influential. It's so, even though it itself is a pastiche of sort of like the 1950s musicals in Hollywood, like your American in Paris and Gigi and all that. So it's kind of this interesting thing where like Jacques Demy was taking inspiration and, you know, moving forward this, you know, old school golden age Hollywood musical. And now that has become its own reference point. So yeah, I think it's such a classic, and I'm always happy to talk about it or hear podcasts about it, because I feel like we should just keep talking about this movie. It turned 60 years old this year in 2024. And I'm like, we should always be talking about it, always be recommending it to people.
Heck yeah. Thank you for that. Dan, what did you think? Because
never seen it before. Never even heard of it before.
Oh, okay.
You know, we do this show, we watch a lot of movies, and like every once in a while you come across one where you're like, well, this just is going to change my life. This is one of those movies, because I love romance movies in general. Always have. And La La Land is one of my favorite movies of the last 20 years, hands down. And seeing this, it's like one of those movies you can't unsee, where you're like, oh, well, now this is going to be like a new love of my life. Like this, like for the rest of my life, I'm going to watch this like every few years and just be like enthralled by it. It is just like, there's so many things, being into like Wes Anderson films and La La Land, and then seeing this, you're like, oh, like you can just see, like you draw direct lines, like the production design, the color. It's like every Wes Anderson movie ever. And then obviously La La Land was super heavily influenced by this movie. And yeah, it's a reminder that, there's always movies out there you haven't seen that are just magical, that are just kind of waiting for you. And then you come across them, you're like, wow. Like this is just, it's weird because, the campy elements of it, the set design, the color, them singing every single line, those things didn't even click to me when I was watching it, because all of the other elements, the romance, the heightened emotion, it's just, I don't know, it was so engaging from the moment it starts until the end. Yeah, a beautiful, beautiful film. That I loved. Absolutely loved it.
I'm so glad, Dan, because it was one of those opportunities where I didn't want to pass it up because the movie's so wonderful, but because we had talked, we did a whole series of episodes on risque romance.
Yes.
And, in some very kind of light ways, this falls under that, but it's also just like so classical in that sense of romance. And yet the things that really stood out for me on this watch, and so I'm curious, kind of looking at it from a 2024 lens, I don't know. I think that all of those surface level camp qualities are ever present as always. The color, the music, the melodrama, and yet for some reason it hit me in a really kind of like subconsciously political way this time.
Okay. All right.
Go on. So like I had never really thought too deeply about the issue of wealth and financial struggles and working class versus upper class with my previous watches of this movie, but for some reason that felt so pronounced here, way more so than kind of the cookie cutter element of girl meets guy from the wrong side of the tracks, right? There's that trope that has been done to death, and then there's this delicate fashion in which Demy kind of positions our characters to both represent a certain echelon of people, but also like break out of that stereotype in a way that just makes these characters so three-dimensional that you rarely get. And I'm not a huge romance fan, and I will say I'm not going to have us go down a tangent of why I generally despise La La Land, but to Manish's point about like Barbie and so many other of these like kind of colorful, more, the idea here is that there's this transgression happening while also like kind of playing to the broad audience. And that really stuck with me. And maybe it's because I recently rewatched Barbie. I think that might have played something to it, where I was like already, because like, Gerwig plays it on her sleeve there, where it's all the transgressions are both there and winking at the same time. And here it's much more couched in this classic love story. I don't know. Have you guys really felt that at all, either on your first watch, Dan, or any of your rewatches, Manish, that class was actually more forefront in this story than maybe I initially thought?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that I did not pick up on when I was, 22 watching this movie, because that was kind of when I was in my most like, star-crossed lovers, like want to believe in the deep power of romance phase, and like I'm still like that, but now I, pay attention to politics more than I did, 12 years ago. But I definitely think that this movie is very much about class and wealth. And I mean, if you think about Genevieve as a single mother, in essentially she's on the brink of poverty. If you think about it, I mean, yes, her house is beautiful, but they seem like the kind of people that are kind of broke, even if because they can't pay their debts, and they have to. He can't. He can't marry and save her because he's in the war, and so she has to figure out another way to survive. And I think her decision to marry Roland is very much it's a financial, economic, practical decision more so than it might be anything else. And I think that, I mean, of course, he's a very sweet guy, and he accepts her, from with her pregnancy. But and then you also think about Guy. He's going off to the Algerian War, which essentially, I was doing some research on this. Essentially, a war that became very unpopular with the French public, and they kind of had to end it because pretty much everyone in France turned against it. And if you think about that as a metaphor, you kind of have this thing where he goes off to fight in this war and then kind of comes back and realizes that life went on without him, and that the supposed love of his life has actually married someone else and is. And he also has to figure out how is he going to survive the situation as a war veteran that is kind of coming back to no money, basically. So it's definitely an interesting take, and I like the comparisons with Barbie and La La Land. I think also go beyond the visual element of it. As you were saying, Barbie is very transgressive and kind of winking. But so is La La Land. I mean, I think La La Land is actually a very cynical movie. I think it's about people that choose their careers over their relationships.
I agree.
And it's sort of about this pull. I mean, there's really no reason for Mia and Sebastian not to be together. She goes to that audition, she nails it, and then they just it skips 5 years. And you're like, well, did she just go to France and he went off to
Yeah.
In some ways, their careers are just completely, fundamentally incompatible with this love story, and I think that's actually really sad. That's to me, that's the tragedy of the movie, not the fact they don't get together at the end. And they have this whole dream ballet of what their lives could have been like, and it's like, well, yeah, it could have been that actually. It's your decision not to do it. So I think it's really. It's this idea of this young romance that is just incompatible with the realities of war, of class, of pregnancy, of marriage, of death. And I think that's sort of that is what I think draws me back to this movie over and over again, is this sort of rich text underneath is this candy colored aesthetic.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think I picked up on the kitchen sink drama part of it pretty quickly, but I'm seeing it when I'm 41 years old. So it's
yeah.
But I will say the opening, hour as they're falling in love. I mean, it's so
oh my God,
intoxicating. It's I love movies where people fall in love. It's my favorite thing ever. And what the thing that I'm interested in, I would love to know your all's opinion on it, because I have to play it off La La Land a little bit, and to echo what Manish is saying with La La Land in general, it's the ending of that film was clearly inspired by this, right? Mm-hmm. But whereas in Umbrellas, it feels the ending has a very, very bittersweet feeling. Bittersweet is the perfect word to describe it, because it is very sad that they're not together. But that final scene at the gas station, it's so overflowing with emotion. I don't even know what emotion you would call it, but there's something there. And I compare that to La La Land and the final scene of them in the club seeing each other, and I'm like, what? La La Land to me is an amazing movie until the ending. I absolutely despise the ending. I think it's terrible. I mean, I hate the ending so much.
Yeah, quick sidebar for Manish. Dan does this a lot.
Yeah, this is kind of my thing.
I love that.
I love the first 9/10 of the movie. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But that part of it. But what is it in Umbrellas that allows for us to feel okay that they're not together? I don't even think it's because Guy has, was it Madeline and his family? Mm-hmm. That's not why it's okay, right? Like, there's another reason that Demy makes it okay. I don't know what it is. Do you guys know what that is? What I'm sort of pointing to? He makes it okay that they're not together, and I don't know why or how.
There is kind of a like, it's not a resigned acceptance like in La La Land, right?
Yeah.
It's more of a kind of, I don't know, there's this, and I think maybe that's what bugged me about La La Land too, is that like is that cynical aspect that you were saying, Manish, where it does kind of let its characters throw everything away. And for Umbrellas, it's the circumstances that arise, and like the fates are against them, whether it's political or otherwise. And so the feeling that I get, I think you're right, Dan, it's so hard to pinpoint because it's such a unique feeling that does combine bitterness and sweetness in equal measure, but doesn't leave that kind of like taste in your mouth, that bad taste in your mouth. Yeah. And it almost feels like, I'm trying to think of another ending that is similar, and I feel
Royal
like
Tenenbaums comes to mind.
Yeah, that's a great one, actually. Yeah. Where there's this like, there's this finality to it, but like this comforting acceptance in the like finality that we all have in common. This kind that whether it's death or love or war or heartbreak, like you're going to be okay despite the enormity of that, despite the finality of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess my hot take would be like, I actually don't think La La Land works without the ending that it has. And I think it's the same with the Umbrella of Cherbourg. I think on some level, it's this idea that the moment's just past. You know, they were torn apart by the circumstances of war or their careers or even their own egos. And I think that ultimately it's just the moment, it's gone. And that's sort of that's the beauty of it. To me, that's what separates these two movies, and especially the Umbrella of Cherbourg, from, you know, any other movie kind of in this similar genre, where I feel like lesser movies have moved, you know, heaven and earth to get the couple together, and and then like, you know, that's great, but you know, I guess like, well, what I'm realizing as I'm in my 30s and kind of getting older is how much I love a bittersweet romantic ending, where it's like, you know, they didn't get together, but in some ways that's more satisfying because, well, it also reminds me of like Call Me by Your Name, you know, because like
a lot,
that to me is this perfect example of a movie where this couple had something in a very specific period of time, in a very specific location, in a very specific set of circumstances that just can never be recreated. You know, like, you know, Elio and Oliver can rent that house again. They can go there a different summer. But it just won't be the same because it wasn't the first time. It's the same with like Lost in Translation. That's not a romance, but like, it's that same thing of like, let's never come here again because it won't ever be the same. And I feel like that's how it is for the Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And because you can't recapture that youthful, you know, young love, let's have sex and forget about the war thing, because now we're parents, we own businesses, we have a driver, you know, or we have a fancy car. Like, there's just, our lives has just moved on beyond it, and to go back to it just wouldn't be, they're not the same people they were when they were 16. You know, I mean, he's been through a whole war. She's been through, you know, a wedding and childbirth and, you know, poverty at some point. And he also went through poverty and stuff. So it's this idea that like, you just can't repeat it because it's like, you can't go home again. It's as simple as that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great sentiment. I think You Can't Go Home Again. And that brings me to kind of like a wrap-up question that will hopefully get us moving over to Barbarella somehow.
Oh god, we're having this like very philosophical discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of You Can't Go Home Again, in the 1968 film. No, but like I want to make sure we're thinking about that camp lens as we transition, because I do want your guys' take on that kind of magic trick that Demy pulls here, where he's able to have it be this confection that just like goes down so easily, and yet, like you said, Dan, like it is kind of a shock to kind of get into the swing of this, jazzy operatic wall-to-wall singing thing, as well as trying to navigate all of the complexities of this very serious and philosophical love story. Where do you guys think it kind of fits in the camp canon, so to speak? I almost am on the thought now that I've seen how deep a discussion on this film can get, that perhaps it transcends camp.
Yeah, I mean, you could make that argument. I mean, on the one hand, it clearly is sort of like a love of aesthetic and being over the top and exuberance, and artifice, right?
Yeah,
he revels in it. So from those parameters, like, yeah, there's definitely some clear camp elements going on, without a doubt. And what he's trying to do, it's like an opera, but also like an Americanized musical at the same time, like the pastiche element that Manish brought up. It's all there. But I think, it reminds me a lot of a film that we covered earlier this season, The Love Witch, which is different in the sense that like it's more anachronistic and, it's like a movie about now, but looking back, where the camp elements are so entrenched and so just a given. It's a given that the language that this film is in visually. And I think that when someone's operating at that level of camp, it does have effect that could transcend it a bit. I don't know what you would call that, post camp something. I don't know. It does. It escapes. I think when we talk about camp, there's always like this element of irony and distance going on, whether it be pure or naive camp, right? Or intentional camp, I should say. Here, obviously, it's intentional, but I'm not seeing the ironic distance here, right? Like, if he was being more tongue-in-cheek with the music, but he's not. It's serious. Like, he actually believes that these emotions are important and real. There's like that formalist aspect to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a tough call. I mean, obviously there's a lot of camp elements going on, but I don't know that it really fits into what Sontag would call camp in her essay. I think it's something maybe a little bit different, like a third way or something. I don't know, Manish, what do you think?
I feel like it has to do with like the Jacques Demy, like French New Wave of it all, because what I know of the French New Wave, and I'm no expert. I've seen a lot of movies, but I can't write a thesis on it or anything. But what I know is like the way that they kind of watch Hollywood movies and then were able to like morph it into this like Frenchy thing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the way, like, you hear, like, I've read, these guys talk about, like, Hitchcock and Billy Wilder and stuff, and it's like, they consumed all this stuff that feels very, like, I mean, well, we know those directors as being very, sophisticated and artistic and, auteurist, but, back then, like, Hitchcock was sort of thought of as, like, popular entertainment and, mainstream, like, like, for the masses type. But I feel like these French directors like looked at, like Vincent Minnelli movies or Hitchcock movies and stuff, and they found this like the artistry and the like the sophistication behind them. They were one of the first ones, and So I feel like, they like Jacques Demy can watch something like An American in Paris and figure out a way to, pick out the sophistication and, make it into something more emotionally resonant and kind of make that part of it more prominent. So, I mean, but I have seen this movie with an audience. Like,
Yeah.
I showed this movie to my boyfriend a few years ago, and he we were laughing with it. I think there are parts of it that are intentionally funny. I mean, like, I think the part that always comes to mind is when Madeline is like tells him that his like aunt or whatever is dead, and it's like this like big thing, or like when he's in the gas station like fighting with his boss, and it's like these like operatic crescendos. I mean, I can't imagine those weren't like winking little things about like opera and musical theater and stuff. Like that has to be just knowing what I know about this like cohort of directors from this era. So I do think that there's element of camp and like. I think, of course, the production design is very over the top. I mean, I don't know if anyone's house has ever looked like that ever outside of a soundstage. So I think it's there, but for me as a queer person that has watched a lot of camp, I think there's a lot of honesty and truth and authenticity in camp and farce and artificiality. I'm a big fan of Almodovar, and I think he also straddled this line of between artifice and authenticity. And this is something that Greta Gerwig said in so many interviews that, what did she say? It was like artificially authentic or something. That was the phrase that she had used several times when talking about Barbie. And you can see it because like she built these sets that are obviously plastic and fake, but they're more real than like whatever CGI nonsense is going on in like, Quantumania or whatever.
Yeah.
So like it's to me, I'm like I don't know, like when I watch a movie, I'm like I want to see something that feels like tangible and real, even if it looks totally artificial. If that makes sense, like it's just this fine line.
That hits the nail on the head, I think, and I think I've figured out the segue, guys, to Barbarella. And I think you helped me, Manish, because this emphasis, I like the Almodovar connection, where it's like it straddles this so perfectly. And I remember when I did my rewatch of Cherbourg and the opening scene, I'm reminded is like greasy guys in an auto mechanic shop just like singing very like out of all the settings you could start your romantic movie musical, the auto shop, and then like there's even some like winking going on there too, where like one of the guys is like, I'd rather go see a movie, who likes the opera, but he's singing it, and like that's fun, that's funny. There is definitely a conscious tone of playfulness there, despite the very real downtrodden aspects of the story. And I mean, I'm looking at an old film comment interview with Demy, and the first thing he talks about when asked about Cherbourg is the Algerian War. And like that was seemingly like the main inspiration here, is that like he's showing on a like molecular level how much that conflict and the choice for France to invade hurt so many lives. And here's just one tragic story. So I think my segue then is, speaking of tragic stories, what the heck? Well, oh my gosh. This is the number one film that comes up when you're looking through listicles and references to camp style and campiness in the 1960s is Jane Fonda in Barbarella. I had never seen this movie. I had never planned to see this movie, but I felt like I kind of do this. Maybe it's because I've got some kind of sadomasochist undertones, but like I pick the one movie that I'm just gonna revel in and love, and then I pick another movie that I'm like, this is gonna be difficult, because I want it to feel a little bit like work. Or something.
Yeah.
So I had nothing. I had no idea about this. We obviously had seen the famous still, but I had very different experience with this film than I did compared to another kind of famous campy movie that we covered on the last season, Zardos.
Yeah,
Where it was just like I had seen the still so many times and had always wondered, never realized that it could actually end up being an interesting movie. But in this case, it's the short answer is drugs, I'm guessing. But
yeah, I think alcohol in this case,
alcohol for sure, which is
yeah.
which is a very specific kind of drug that has a very specific kind of effect on a film. Had either of you seen this before?
Manish, have you seen it?
Yeah. It was on the Criterion Channel.
Oh, really?
Back in like 2020, probably.
Nice.
I think. Like I remember watching it in lockdown. I think it was a part of their like. It must have been some like sci-fi or camp or some kind of like series that they were programming. And as a huge Jane Fonda fan, I had to watch it. So yeah, I've seen it before.
What were your thoughts on it then and now? Like, how is it? Where does it sit in your? It's in your top 10 list, bottom 10.
Oh
list?
yeah. No, it's definitely not bottom 10. I actually kind of like the movie. I think it's kind of, it's definitely, to me, it's like a queer camp classic. Like as much as heteronormative as it is, like it's very like just the set design and sort of the female villain and the like. I think the Jane Fonda of it all, and just like the way that it's so like arch feels very like. I think it plays better the second time you watch it, just because like it's a little bit more knowing. I think that it might get credit for, or maybe it's just like it's just so earnest. Perhaps maybe it's not knowing. Maybe it's like earnest. I don't know. It's a weird movie because you have this like. Incredibly like staunchly feminist and political and like heiress to a film dynasty like in this very movie where she's objectified so much, and yet you don't want to like crawl into a hole when you watch it, and it's like has a really great catchy tune, and it's a tune that I find myself humming every now and then, which is very strange. It's not like I've seen this movie a million times, but it's I don't know. I think this movie qualifies more as like the unintentional camp, the way that like Cherbourg is very intentional camp. Yeah. But I think there's something that's there's something a little bit alluring about this movie, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about it?
It's one of those movies that like, this is the first time I've ever seen it, and it definitely has and always has had a reputation, right? It's always sort of been a cult movie. Growing up, it was always kind of like, oh yeah, like I've heard of that before. Or it did quite well in the UK. I think it was the second biggest movie that year in the UK in 1968, which sounds crazy, but it's true. So like it had like this following. I just was never like, oh, it's like seemed like an exploitation type 60s movie. So I never like had sought it out for whatever reason. Then sitting down and watching it, it just was tough after Umbrellas of Cherbourg, right? It's so absurdist. I was listening to another podcast and they kept on like talking about it being Rick and Morty being sort of inspired by this to some degree. It just has this over the top, pure. That's why I don't understand it a little bit. Like when we talk about like unintended camp, which I think that it definitely falls into, but what was the intention here? I think that's the thing when I'm watching this movie, I'm like, how, I think there was 8 writers of this. 8 credited screenwriters based on a French adult pornographic comic. Dino De Laurentiis producing, shot in Rome. It just, was it a cash grab? Was it, hey, we've got some money, you're around, hey, you're my wife, you want to play the lead? Like, is it just like a confluence in a moment in time where it just all came together and you got Barbarella? I don't know. It seems such an artifact of a very specific moment in the late 60s where things were pretty fucking loose. And we get something like this movie. I would say the visuals are amazing.
Yes.
It is an intriguing and odd film. very much in the same way Zardoz is. But I mean, story-wise, it is just a dumpster fire. Like the opening's like intriguing, and then it just the moment what is it, like a stingray and like a sled ride happens. I'm like, okay, like I can usually buckle up and go along for the ride, but this one actually tested my patience in a way that most movies have never had. So I think for me, it's like, just coming at it from my viewpoint, it just wasn't. This is not really my jam, like totally absurdist films like this. So I'm probably not the right audience for it. I don't know. I mean, it's, I wish there was something going on there. Is there something going on at the surface? Is there like is this a sexual revolution film? Is there like a treatise on like gender going on, or am I missing a lot?
Well, I had a similar question that kind of helped guide my research, and it does seem like, as with most kind of drug-fueled dumpster fires of the 1960s, there's conflicting reports where I think it seemed like they were some members of the crew. So going back to your point about the screenplay, it's the whole like Simpsons joke, script problems from day one, right? Yeah, Terry Southern, the same guy who was like award-winning like ultra novelist and wrote Dr. Strangelove, like literally a perfect script, started with exactly that idea. He wanted to take this adaptation in a kind of subversive way to try to like challenge audiences and like a European sentiment filtered through the American science fiction film, which was, starting to become more popular around this time. And it was a wild idea, and I think like there's elements there scattered throughout the film, especially in the production design, like you mentioned, and the costuming, that hint at that kind of suggestion. But I do think that ultimately it comes down to like Jane Fonda's reporting on what it was like on this set is really hard to ignore. Like, she does feel like she was kind of in like a doped up haze throughout much of the production, felt strong-armed by her then husband, and does not have a lot of great things to say about making this movie. And that's really hard to ignore. And I think might make it difficult for me to do a second watch, because I think there's a lot of signs that are there. Of course, I'm not trying to damn something based on one piece of evidence, but it is this sensation, the sensationalism that doesn't quite feel like everyone's on board. And the sexual objectification and the kind of grab bag of randomness. I think it was the flesh-eating dolls that really was the nail in the coffin for me, as unforgettable as that image is, where I'm just like, I think you're right. I think I'm with you, Dan, where it's just like, it's too much.
We say that, but at the same time, like, there clearly was attempts to like, like, her character is supposed to be sexually liberated, right? In the sense that like, she was never, I think there was some quote, she was never raised with like the puritanical morals of America or something like that. Right. So like that's the thing about this time period, is that like we want to, I don't know, in general, you think of like the cultural revolutions happening in the 60s. You had obviously the shut down student strikes in Paris and all of that. And like this huge heady time, but people are also doing tons of drugs, right? It's like reading Slouching Towards Bethlehem, that like essay by Joan Didion. You're like, oh, this is what it's about, hippies. And you read it, like, well, this is disgusting and awful. Like, what the hell is going on? They gave drugs to a little kid. Like, there's those two different things happening there where there's this openness, there's this exploration, there's this kind of playfulness, but at the same time, kind of to what you're pointing to, and like she points out that, like, you know, the director is pretty much drunk the entire time, you know, at least a functioning alcoholic here, functioning in quotations. There's just these two elements at play: the openness, the playfulness, the thinking and reimagining of sexuality and life and gender and relationships and marriage. All of these things is going on at the time. And this other side of it is, yeah, the sort of darker side of life in general. And it's like, how do they intermix so much here in this movie. And it's just, it's a very, very fascinating film. Right. And I think even just the visuals and the attempt is worth exploring. Because
and I'd say for the intertextual aspects too, it was pretty rewarding to like see where Demolition Man got its idea of sex from, and there was another one that really stood out to me.
Fifth Element,
yeah, totally. And yeah, so there's those elements, and that, like, the campiness of it. To go back to what you were saying, Manish, and I'd love for you to point out some favorites of yours, where it's like the campiness, like multiple truths can be held at the same time. I do not like this movie, and yet the campy elements in isolation, and maybe even upon rewatch, I don't know, it is something that is kind of remarkable, that it exists, that it happened, that it was put to celluloid. What were some of the campy elements that you think are some highlights in this film, Manish?
I mean, I think just the costume design and the set design for me are the two major things. Just like like this movie comes out the same year as 2001: A Space Odyssey, but to the point where I'm like, there's no way that this movie was like directly influenced by 2001 or any way a response to it. But I do think it's kind of this interesting little like flip on, like, I mean, I love 2001 obviously, but like of course that's such a classic movie, but it is this very like esoteric, like, you know, intellectual, like almost indecipherable movie. And I think Barbarella, on the other hand, is like very visceral, very like pleasure focused, very, you know, of the body and of the like, and I just think that like there's, in some ways you can like twist the plot of this movie to be like kind of this like campy little romp about like sex, even if it's like if you look at it from the perspective of like a queer lens, or like like I do know like a few women who like love this movie, and I would be surprised to hear that, because it feels like such a but I think that like the tone of this movie is so arch and so like unserious, and like there are those like elements, and just like the kookiness of the plot, and just like all the different like characters, like the Black Queen in hand, and like, you know, it's just like, what is like, I mean, you know, you talk about the history of the making of the movie, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe it wasn't all just everyone just like being like high and whatever. I mean, you know, Jane Fonda has been through a lot in her career, and I don't doubt that this movie contributed to some of that. And I don't think her marriage was very happy.
Yeah.
To Roger Vadim. But I think that like but I think there is this element of like this like late 60s kind of vibe to it, which is, you know, like I said, kind of fun to watch. But yeah, I can't really, I don't know if there's any like one specific thing. Like, I feel like this movie would play much better for you both, like if you saw it like with kind of like a midnight crowd, maybe.
I was thinking
because I just think that like sometimes with like movies like this, like even I wish that like the first time I saw it was kind of like not when I was like panicking about the lockdowns.
I was gonna say,
but yeah, so because I feel like movies like this like they kind of fall flat in my opinion when you're just watching it on your television, or like when you're watching it like alone, or just because I feel like they need an energy to really work. And I think if you're just watching it just to like, while you're like, eating dinner or whatever, I don't know if that energy is really quite there. But yeah, no, I just think Jane Fonda, like she's such a talented actor, like in so many, it's like, of course, like Clute and Coming Home and, what have you. But I just think that like, even with all the trouble that she had, in the 60s, I think she still finds a way to like make this character so engaging and endearing and all that, even if it's such a like non-character, even such a like male fantasy character. But I think it does straddle this line of like male fantasy versus like sexual liberation. It kind of just depends on like, I think that straddling of the line is camp itself as well.
That's true. And I would be remiss to mention before we get to trivia that, Jane Fonda in particular, like rattling around my head still, even though I watched it 3 days ago. And by the way, Dan, I watched it before Cherbourg because I wanted to make sure to end on a good note. But still rattling around my head to the point where it's just like makes me chuckle sometimes is just Barbarella going, Pygar! Just like over and over again about this dumb blind angel. That was one of the highlights for me. Pygar. Anyways, are you ready for some trivia, Dan and Manish?
Let's do it. I'm terrible at trivia, so you got a good shot of winning.
Let's do this.
Oh boy.
So I might have to like just build in some extra clues.
This is gonna be tough
because the 1960s is a little tough. It's literally when Sontag wrote Notes on Camp, but it's also that kind of nascent period where we're having kind of a combo attack of B movies and exploitation and like cheesiness, and then camp is born essentially with Sontag's collection of notes in 1967. Anyways, I'm going to start with an easy one. Manish, basically how it works is I'm going to tell you a quote from the film. It's a campy film from the 1960s. First person to guess it gets the point. Best out of 5 wins. And like I said, I'll build in some extra clues, especially for the trickier ones. All right?
Okay.
Here is the famous quote from number 1. I always try to start it off easy. Labia, kind of easy hit.
Okay.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Is that Dr. Strangelove?
Ooh, no, that would make a lot of sense.
Batman?
Yeah, good work, Dan. Batman the movie.
It's the only movie I can think of in the 60s.
Are you just going to guess Batman for all of it?
I was just like, I had that in the chamber. I was like, let's go, yes! Batman, it's got to be Batman.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, I mean, that's probably...
I love that movie,
Me too. I've rewatched that so many times since I was a kid. Yeah. But yeah, Adam West running around with a comically large round bomb saying, you can't get rid of the bomb. Amazing. Number 2. Let's go with... let's kind of go up in difficulty for each one. Yeah. After all those years, I'm still in this chair. Doesn't that give you some kind of responsibility? I'm just trying to explain to you how things really are. You wouldn't be able to do these awful things to me if I weren't still in this chair.
Huh.
Oh my gosh, this sounds so familiar.
Oh, yeah.
Next clue.
So the clue, I'm so sorry, Manish, you're going to crush Dan on the last 3, I'm pretty certain.
Okay.
But I'm going to lob this to my co-host. We didn't do an episode on this one, but we did do a guest spot on the Spoiler Piece Theater Patreon show regarding this 1960s campy classic.
Oh, What Happened to Baby Jane?
Yeah, there you go. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Okay.
Less spoiler piece, by the way.
Yeah, those guys are great. All right, number 3. Let's go with this one. I laughed before I can even get out of my mouth. Boobies, boobies, boobies. Nothing but boobies. Who needs them? I did great without them.
Oh my god.
Clue?
Yeah.
Clue us. Clue me.
A famed Chicago movie critic wrote the sequel to this film.
Oh, Valley of the Dolls.
Boom. Got it, Manish. Nice work.
Oh, yeah. What was the sequel Beyond the Valley of the Dolls?
Yeah. Horny Roger.
I'm really bad at movie quotes.
Okay.
So.
So, I'll
So
build in
you're
the clue.
you're an equal then.
Yeah.
I am horrendous.
Yeah.
I could have seen it and be like, I know you're talking.
Exactly.
You could've
Like,
watched
I've
it last
seen that
night.
movie, but I don't remember that quote at all.
Okay, let's try this one. And this is definitely more in the realm of exploitation films, but I think an argument can be made for its campiness. I'm not sure if either of you are familiar, but I can give you some clues, I think, to get you there. Here's the quote, though. Oh, shoot. No, I lost it.
Is that the quote?
No, sorry. Oh, here we go. Women, let them vote, smoke and drive, even put them in pants, and what happens? A Democrat for president.
Oh my god.
Is that a recent quote?
Yeah, exactly.
It could be, yeah.
From
Jesus.
last year?
Did a former president say that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know.
A Russ Meyer film. Heavily influential to Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez. It has a ridiculous title with multiple exclamation marks.
Okay, Faster Pussycat.
Yeah,
Kill.
there you go. Yes,
That's the only title that I know that has like multiple exclamation marks that Quentin Tarantino has seen, I think.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, good
I don't
job.
think I've ever seen the movie. I just know that title.
Oh my gosh, it is a trip. I did almost pick it.
I
for
should
this
try to
one,
watch
be
it.
honest. But yeah, it is exploitation through and through. Tarantino's a sick man. Okay, are we on the last one now?
I think
So yeah, so it's
5.
2-2, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, tiebreaker. Let's go. Yeah, this one's a little tricky because so many of the quotes are, and this is your built-in clue. It's tricky because so many of these quotes are like nonsense words. But here's a quote from the narrator. There are not many men yet, just a few tribes scattered across the wilderness, never venturing far, unaware that other tribes even exist, too busy with their own lives to be curious, too frightened of the unknown to wander. Their laws are simple. The strong take everything. This is Akoba, leader of the Rock tribe.
No. Planet of the Apes?
No. Decent guess.
2001.
No, but another movie that it doesn't just start in the ancient past. The entire film is placed in the ancient past with a very famously scantily clad Raquel Welch.
Yeah. It's like something BC, right?
Yeah, I'll give it to you, Dan. 1 million years BC.
Oh,
Film.
right.
Oh
I
my
haven't
gosh.
heard
Which
of
I've never
that.
seen.
Yes.
But I've seen the photo of Raquel.
Of course, it's one of those iconic 60s images, right? I'm so sorry, Manish. I'm going to go ahead and admonish Dan off the mic for you. Beating our guest, who he should have let win.
No, I
never win.
deserve.
Are you kidding me?
It was really fun. Oh my gosh, I have to once again just put a plug in for you, Manish. It pod to be you. This guy knows his stuff. I was so psyched that he was able to join us. Check out the podcast. What do you got coming up next on the show, or any other writings you might be up to, Manish?
It pod to be you is on a bit of a hiatus. However, there's like 5 years, 100+ episodes there for you to go back. And because I am kind of focusing on this Bollywood project that I'm working on, but if I to be you is always going to be, up and about. I love the podcast. I love doing it. I'm always looking for, any excuse to go back to do it. So if either of the two of you have a movie you'd like to talk about, please, I will happily do it and bring the podcast back.
27 Dresses. Have you done it yet?
You know what? I have, and that's one of my favorite old episodes.
Nice.
With my friend Danny Bowes. I made him. I was like, I need you to be a guest on this podcast because I like want to talk to you on it. And then I was like, let's just find a movie that you have no interest in seeing. But he actually liked it. So
that's because it's a classic film.
Yeah. But yeah, so definitely there. Like for my 100th episode, I did Gone Girl, like with a few, like I brought in a few guests to talk in like different segments. I've done Titanic. I've done a lot of great movies on there. I mentioned the 1960s miniseries. I did a bad romance miniseries, queer romance miniseries, a sports romance miniseries. So a lot of good stuff there. And yeah, this podcast goes back like 5 years, 100+ episodes with commentaries and stuff. So definitely look out for that. It Pod to Be You on all major podcasts. You can find that podcast and me on Twitter. I'm at Vertigay314. That's VERTIGAY 314 on Twitter. You can find me on Letterboxd under my name, Manish Mathur. Yeah, that's kind of where you can find me. I'm like sporadically writing and podcasting, so everything's on Twitter.
Very cool.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Manish, for
Thank
being on
you.
the show. We'll be on the lookout for that Bollywood series too. That
Yeah.
sounds awesome. What do we got coming up for the finale?
Of Camp Cinema.
Camp Cinema season, Dan.
Pre-1960, doing Johnny Guitar and Imitation of Life.
Oh, wow.
To close it out for this season. As always, thanks for listening. This has been Film Trace.